Hey, this is Dre with Yourself.Podcast, and I hope that everyone finds themselves doing well today. Today, we will be having sort of a deep discussion, um, and I just want to warn our listeners today that this conversation does touch on child sexual abuse, people trafficking, and domestic violence. We honor the courage of survivors and invite listeners to engage at their own pace. If at any part of this discussion starts to feel overwhelming, please pause and care for yourself, as we will do the same for our guest, Sissy, today, if necessary. And I'd like to introduce Sissy. Thank you so much for coming on to Yourself.Podcast.
Thank you.
How
Happy to be
how are you today?
not too shabby, pretty good. Uh,
I hope
Having a good day.
I hope the weather is warming up for you wherever you are.
It is gorgeous outside today.
That's great. That's great. Here in Las Vegas, we're hitting the 98s already, so it's all downhill from here. So we're gonna be some heavy hundreds here in a minute. But if you don't mind, we'll just go ahead and jump right in.
Okay.
Um, so we're like I said, we're going to be talking about the sexual abuse that you experienced.
Mhm.
You mentioned there was some human trafficking and some domestic violence that you went through. Um,
Mhm.
what the first thing I want to know, because it's such a sensitive subjects that we're going to be discussing, what
Uh-huh.
what gives you the strength today to share your story?
I share my story to hopefully help others. I share my story because I know that there are many others out there who are currently in situations of either child sexual assault or child abuse or domestic violence situations, trafficking situations, in hopes that my story can give them the strength to find their voice and to get out of their situation.
It's very noble of you, and it's very I would say it's probably, I told you my producer was going to dig, and he's starting to dig. It is very noble, and it's so hard. I know that it's so hard to share your journey and your experiences that you've had, because they are so sometimes painful, well, all times painful emotionally, and sometimes painful physically as well, and definitely psychologically. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you can recall, at what age did the child abuse start, and at what age did it end?
So for me, my first assault was at the age of 3 years old.
Okay.
And that assault happened by my stepfather at the time, who was my brother's biological father.
Okay.
Um, but I can still see myself that day. That vision that very first time has never left my mind. I may have blocked others. I don't know, because it's that one instance that I can remember. Um, at that time, I was we lived in a older brick home, and there was an attic space that I used to play in.
Oh, okay.
And I was up in the attic in my own little world playing. Um, I had on a dress and some white leotards that day. I don't remember exactly the dress, but the white leotards I can't forget. Um, and I was sitting and playing with my doll. And there was an opening um, going up into the attic, like from a floor level going up in. And I was playing with my doll, and he kind of poked his head up to the floor level, looking over at me. And I don't remember what he said. I don't remember what the conversation was. Um, but at one point, um, I was laying down and he was pulling the white leotards off of me. And um, he began touching me. And the next thing I know, I could hear somebody hollering, saying something like calling his name or calling my name. I don't really remember that part very well. Uh, I just remember laying there being incredibly confused.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, what is he doing? Why? What's going on? Kind of thoughts. Like, I didn't know if it was wrong, if it was right. I knew that I felt really uncomfortable um, and scared, because beyond that, he was very physically abusive to us kids. So I'm already at a disadvantage. You know,
Right.
I can't reject, I can't say don't touch me, I can't, I can't do anything except let it happen. Um
Because you were in
but
fear of something worse happening because of
exactly,
or retaliation, I should say. Yeah.
exactly. Um so when he heard somebody holler, he immediately stopped and went down the stairs. And I laid there for, you know, I guess in a state of shock for a few minutes. And then when I realized that he wasn't coming back up, I put my underwear, my leotards back on, and went back to playing.
And
I it's I just was still in this what just happened sort of thought. Um
how did when you got dressed, did you have a chance to kind of collect yourself, or did you immediately go back downstairs, or did you go back to
no,
playing?
I stayed up there for a while. I don't remember exactly how long I stayed up there. But I no, I didn't want to be around him. I was still terrified.
Right.
Because like I said, there was a lot of other abuse that we sustained aside from that. He was very, very physically abusive towards us kids, my brother and I, excuse me. And he was verbally abusive towards my mom. I only remember clearly one physical attack on my mom. But there was a lot of drugs and alcohol abuse in the home. Um, and my brother and I were parts of that
Mm.
as well. Um, so there was just a lot of uh, things that aside from the sexual abuse that children
Right.
aren't supposed to be parts of.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't remember another episode, anything after that. That was just the very first time that happened. Um, and there may be more that I haven't tapped into, and there may not, because I did tell my mom.
That's
We were in a car ride when I told her about it. Um, and we went to the police station,
oh.
and I was asked to tell what happened. Um, and there was two policemen there. And this was, gosh, back in the 70s. So they didn't really handle cases like this like they do today.
Mm-hmm.
They have specifically trained officers that handle stuff like this now, and they didn't back then. And but I was asked to tell my story. I told what had happened, and we left the police station and we went home, and nothing ever became of it.
Yeah, see, and I've noticed that oftentimes we find that the abusive or the abuser of committing child sexual assault is usually a family member or someone close to the family member, um, and so I wanted to. That's interesting that you say that you went to the police department. Now, when before you went to the police department and you told your mom, did she
Mm-hmm.
automatically believe you and say, we need to take care of this? Or did she kind of, okay, well, if you're really telling the truth, then let's go? Was there any doubt that you felt from your mom?
I did not feel that from my mom.
Okay.
I did not. I was later told that the reason that nothing happened had a lot to do with my age and whether or not there was enough of anything to
Truth. Yeah.
substantiate my story.
Yeah.
So
But
my age worked against me.
yeah, and it's interesting because a 3 year old or a 4 year old, how would they know to even describe certain actions? And that's what I always find, is that people don't believe the little ones because they say, oh, they lie a lot. And it could be that the kid, yeah, maybe lies about where's your toy? Did you lose your toy? And they want a new toy because they broke it or something like that. And they might fib about that. But
Mm-hmm.
they don't lie about something this serious, and so was this the last time that it happened with your stepdad, or were there multiple times with him?
With him, I don't recall any other incidents. I just there's a lot that I do remember, and then there's also a lot that I don't remember with her time with him. She did stay with him after that. She did not leave, so I don't know if the police convinced her that it likely didn't happen, that or maybe not in the manner that like it wasn't as serious as the manner that I was telling it in. I don't know. I never asked my mom about it later. Um, the things that stand out stronger in my mind were the physical abuse that we sustained. He was his form of punishment, he liked to use a belt buckle,
Hmm.
not the leather strap of a belt, but the buckle.
And
Um,
you
and
said you had siblings at this time.
so,
How many siblings did you have?
My mom only had my brother and I. I do have other siblings on my father's side.
Oh, okay, okay. So, but you in where you were living with this abuser, it was you and your brother.
It was my brother and I, and then um, yeah, it was just us two kids. There was another couple that would come around with a child once in a while, but it was primarily my brother and I.
Okay, all right. So you were. How do you think this? How do you think this abuse affected you? Um, well, first, I didn't mean to cut you off. You said
No,
that this was the only time that you can actually remember right now, currently. And that doesn't mean that the memory might not come in the
right.
future, but to this particular time after the first incident, after that, you don't remember right now, but you were starting to say that he was physically abusive. Was he physically abusive to all three of you, or just to you and your brother?
Primarily my brother and I is what I remember. The night that my mom did finally leave him is the strongest memory that I ever have of him being physically abusive towards her. Um, it was primarily for whatever reason my brother and I always got the brunt of things. Like they would be arguing, but my brother and I somehow would pay the consequences.
Mm-hmm. And how old were you guys about that time? 3, 4?
Yeah, my brother's a year younger than I.
Okay.
And I was 4 when my mom finally left him. And then I didn't see my mom again for 3 years.
And what?
We
Why?
were taken to live with my grandma, and I didn't see her again for 3 years after that.
Okay. And was there any abuse that continued there?
At my grandma's house, yeah. So my mom had 2 brothers. She had the youngest was 10 years older than me, and he was mentally challenged.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he was very slow, uh, very your mind. Like, even though he was 10 years older, his mind was more at my level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then her other brother was a few years older than him.
Okay.
Uh, at different times, I was also assaulted by both of them at my
By
grandma's house.
by both of them.
By both of them.
That that makes me question something that I know we didn't talk about prior, but how would your special needs brother know how to commit those acts? Because my belief is children do not know this behavior, especially special needs children. They have to be taught this special behavior. So do you
Mhm.
believe that possibly the oldest brother might have been abusing the special needs brother, in which he taught him how to, and then your special needs brother possibly not knowing that it was wrong, but it was something that was normal? Do you believe that, or do you think that by your feelings that he really knew what was he was doing?
So the things that he in particular had me do had was more touching type things, like touching him, caressing him, um, I believe he did touch me. Um, but it was never more than touching with him. And the other uncle, I can remember clearly, and this one, so the younger uncle who was challenged, my grandma did catch him at one point.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
my nobody ever knew about the other uncle because I never said anything. I never told anybody until many years later. Um, he went further than just touching. Um, and one of the things that stands out strongly is his smell.
Mhm.
Um, there was one of the incidents that I can remember is I was laying on, they had bunk beds in the basement. That's where the men in the house were in the basement. And um, I don't remember what my grandma was doing. She was, I don't know. But I was laying on the bunk bed with him and we were watching TV.
Mhm.
And I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And I think I had on a nightgown because I think it was morning. And it was like, just laying and watching TV in the morning. And um, he placed himself between my legs, not inserting, but just between my legs, and proceeded to do his thing. Um, and I just remember laying there frozen,
Mhm.
too scared to move, because I've already been traumatized from previous. And just thinking, well, this just must be what guys do.
Right. Right.
This
But
must, um, and I just stared at the TV and I didn't want to move. I, even though everything in me wanted to get up and run,
you
but
physically, but I mean, you're frozen in fear. So yeah, you don't know what to
right,
do. Yes.
right. And just all I could do was lay there, stare at the TV, and pretend like nothing was happening. And what I've realized is that that's how I started dealing with it all the time. Is I would take my mind to something else and just pretend like it wasn't happening every time
Mhm.
something like that happened to me. Is that's how I coped through it. Was I pretended like nothing was happening. And later, through my healing, I've realized that the very first time that I reported this set the tone for after, because nothing became of it. That in essence told me that it's okay what they're doing.
Like that's what's supposed to happen. That's just a natural thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, um, so knowing that you started to kind of get this idea that, oh, this is what men do. I They use girls, and I'm a girl. Did you have kind of that mentality? Um, how did it affect the way you viewed yourself? Because at this age, how old were you at this age when it was your your brother,
My uncles,
your uncles? I'm sorry. Yes.
yeah, they were they were like brothers because I lived there with
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
and they weren't that much older than me,
Yeah.
you know, so it was kind of like having brothers. But I lived with my grandma. Uh, Let me back up 1 second. So my grandma, like I said, my grandma did catch the mentally challenged uncle and me. She caught me touching him and him with his pants down, and that. And um, even though even though she caught him, and she attempted to try to instill some punishment. Child services were notified because I was a ward of the state at the time. Um, my grandma was receiving money for keeping my brother and I for my mom. Um, and so she was, in essence, I guess, fostering us. Um, and so child services were notified. But he was, let's see, if I was, he was either 14 or 15 because he was only 10 years older than I. So, um, and they came and they talked to my grandma, they talked to him. I don't remember if they talked to me or not. Um, and that's all I remember. I don't remember any kind of, there may have been some sort of consequence. I don't remember a consequence. He wasn't removed from the home. And all I can figure is that his mental state factored into that.
Mm.
Um, I don't, I never questioned my grandma about it. And when I went through my grandma's stuff, I found, a letter from social services about it. Uh, but it was just, I guess they had him on like some sort of probationary period. Again, times back then aren't what they are now. Now I think they probably, regardless, would have removed him from the home or removed me from the home.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about back in the 70s, and things just didn't operate the way that they do now. Not that it's a whole lot better now. I mean, there's still a lot of issues. Um,
Especially in the
so,
foster care system. Yeah.
mhm. So fast forward, um, you know, I was around 7 when my mom came back into my life, and my brother and I went to go live with her. And my mom has a new boyfriend. The new boyfriend I knew because he was one of the people that came around when my mom was married to my brother's dad.
Okay.
Um, so I knew this man well. He wasn't a stranger to me. And I, at this point, I'm dealing with a lot of abandonment issues because of my mom not being in my life. My mom has told me that my biological father is not even alive. I, you know, so my biological father isn't part of my life. And my environments have not been good environments up to this point. Um, so I don't recognize it as abandonment issues because I'm still a child, but I long for the love of my mom. That much I knew is that I needed my mom. I needed my mom in my life. Um, and I just really wanted to be with my mom. So when my mom asked my brother and I if we wanted to go live with her, we both were like, yes, we want to be with you. Um, so we, for a while seemed like a normal family, a family of four. And we got along with my mom's boyfriend. Um, at that point, abuse was nothing abnormal to us because of what we saw with my brother's dad. However, um, this time my mom was the one who was getting the brunt of abuse. So there was, things got physical sometimes between her and him, and we were witnesses to that. Um, but I was watching Family Feud. This is a memory that came back to me when I was writing my book because I was trying to work through the different stages, like when did things begin with him, and I uncovered this memory, and when I uncovered it, I thought, if I had heard that as a mother, would I have had the same reaction? And I have to say, given everything that I've been through, I absolutely would not have had the same reaction that my mother had. But I was watching Family Feud. I don't remember what the question was, but there was an answer that came up: making love.
Mm-hmm.
And I innocently asked, what is making love? And my mom's boyfriend said, I'll show you one day.
Oh no.
And my mom laughed it off
Hmm.
like he was making a joke.
This must bring, I mean, not just during this interview that I'm having with you today, but through your adult life, now knowing what a mother's role, well, maybe not so, because I don't know if you have kids or not, but even as knowing what mothers ought to be,
Mm-hmm.
um, this must bring some sort of awareness to your mind saying, my mom was severely not put together mentally the way she should have been. I mean, instead of coming to your defense, she almost ridiculed, along with your mom's boyfriend at the time, for asking that question, which every kid will ask at some point in their life because
Mm-hmm.
it's just a natural question. And
Mm-hmm.
the audacity that she had to join in as this, as if this was a joke, that as if, oh, you're being so funny, instead of, you're being extremely inappropriate to my daughter, and
Mm-hmm.
defending you and your feelings and removing you from that moment and explaining to you privately, listen, what
Right.
he said was wrong. I will take care of that, and you and I will discuss what that means, because
Right.
that would be the safest thing. I would think that would be the safest way to resolve that issue or that
Right.
situation.
Right. And I think at that point that, grooming was taking place, and that may have been a test towards my mom and not necessarily me.
Mm-hmm.
Like him saying that would have been to test to see how my mom would react to him over it. Um, but that was probably the beginning with him. And over the course of the next 4 years,
Oh, my.
um, I was at many times his bed partner
So how old
because
were
my
you
mom
there?
worked nights.
How old were you at that point?
7.
Oh my.
And I lost all innocence at 7.
Mm-hmm.
All innocence. I was having full on intercourse with him over the next 4 years.
And did you try to tell your mom at that point?
No.
Why do you feel that you
I was
did you feel that
told that if I said anything, that my mom would send me back to live with my grandma and with somebody who was just longing for their mom and to be with their mom, that to me, you know, in my mind becomes a punishment, that she's going to punish me for this, not you. And like I said, at this point, I've already de- developed in my mind that this is something that people do. This is normal because nothing's ever happened to anybody before, so this must be okay. I'm just not supposed to talk about it, but it's okay. That's what goes on in your mind.
did did he work at all, or was your mom the sole provider?
So he did my mom was the primary provider, but he did work some like odd jobs, not like a steady job. And the other big issue in the home throughout my life with my mom was drug and alcohol abuse,
Mm.
was a constant. Um, and At one point, um, I guess they must, I don't really know the details, um, but they were, for whatever reason, helping out the authorities in drug bust.
Mm. Okay.
And mm, my brother and I were in the car one time when they were meeting somebody, and this becomes key later in my life. Um, the Because I recognized later in life, I recognized that person, but my mom was responsible for putting that person in prison with the drug bust.
Was it your mother's?
He later was a boyfriend of my mom's. He is also the father of my oldest child.
So this is someone that your mom
Later on,
pu-
that my mom went back then when I was a child, when my brother and I were sitting in the back seat of the car the first time I met him. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, but I remember him. He poked his head in the back and through the window, said hi to my brother and I. I remember him. And I later, much later, after my mom left, the guy, the current boyfriend. Uh, so I guess I should finish that part. So my mom eventually did catch him, uh, because he would wait until she would fall asleep, and he would come into my room sometimes. And this particular night, my mom fell asleep on the couch. He came into my room. We lived in a trailer. He came into my room and he didn't turn on the light, but he turned me, like my bed laying this way, he turned me this way on my bed so that my rear was facing the outside of the bed. My bed was up against the wall. So he turned me, slipped off my undies, and, I knew what was happening, but again, my way of dealing with it is to pretend like nothing's happening. And he had his face between my legs. And the next thing I know, the light flicks on in my room and it's my mom. And he jumped up. They started arguing, and I pulled the blankets up over me and rolled over and faced the wall and pretended like I was still sleeping. Like I didn't know what was happening.
Right. It's funny the way a little mind thinks, if I pretend I'm sleeping, they'll stop arguing. This won't be my fault. And they'll be happy and nothing, and everything will go away. When really, number one, for a fact, it is not your fault. Second, he's violating you in a very obvious way. Number three, that should have been a phone call to the authorities at that point. But one thing I'm just a little confused by, and it's just a little detail. This person was in the drug ring that they were trying to catch. But
no, he was assisting in it. He was my mom's boyfriend at the time. This guy was. The father of my son is a different man. But so my mom and the current boyfriend, my brother and I were all in the car when we met that man. The guy that they busted, that later comes back into my life later on.
Oh, and that's when that abuse happened.
Right. I first met him while my mom was with this boyfriend. And she did call the authorities that night. She did.
Okay.
And he was taken off. But when questioned, for a multitude of reasons, I denied knowing what was going on, because there was an incident that had happened much earlier in life. I was probably about 8. I was probably about 8 when I was injured during a early morning incident. There was a pair of hemostats on the floor, and he was getting his thrill that morning before I go to school. And somehow, and I have no idea how, I don't know how it happened, those hemostats scratched the inside of my vaginal opening, and I began bleeding, and that bleeding became hemorrhaging. I can remember him throwing me in a tub of water and literally clots floating out on the water. I was hemorrhaging really bad, and he ended up having to call my mom at work. And he gave me the story to tell before we ever went to the hospital, which that was I was half asleep that morning, and I accidentally sat down on a bottle that was in the floor, and that the bottle cap scratched me.
Mm.
Was the story that he gave me to give. And my on the way to the hospital, I had towels stuffed between my legs that was just filling with blood. And um, I now know as an adult what I didn't know then is that everyone knew it was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how many times I said it, they all knew that it was a lie. My hymen was no longer intact.
Yes. That's what I was going to ask, is that once you got to the hospital or to the ER or wherever you went and they examined you, how could they not have said,
They knew.
this is not something that you just fall onto and accidentally. I mean, that would be like a it's completely out of this world accident for that to
Mm-hmm.
happen, for it to be that serious.
Mm-hmm. They knew. They knew. I was questioned over and over and over again, and I stuck to my story because I was so afraid of being separated from my mom. I was so afraid of being taken away and being sent away that I stuck to my story. Um, and for all they knew, because um, somebody else did it, they couldn't prove that it was him. So they had nothing. If I didn't cooperate, they had nothing. And he had groomed me well by that point
So,
that I was not telling.
did they have any at that time? Did they? Because I'm not familiar if they had these tests or not. Did they have rape kits at that time?
I don't know. I mean, they had to take me into surgery, so whatever,
Oh my!
I had to be surgically fixed.
Oh my!
Um, I don't know what all they did while we were, when they were in surgery, but I know that they knew that I had been sexually assaulted. Um, they just couldn't prove by who, and they couldn't prove when it happened.
So
But
so he was.
and like I said, he threw me in the tub of water right away
Oh yeah. So
because yeah, he had to clean up to make sure that nothing got clean. It all is clear to me now, but as a child, I think he's throwing me in there because he's trying to stop the bleeding.
right, right. Well, essentially, factually, he was, but at the same time, he probably panicked as well, and just thought that maybe if you got clean, that the blood would probably
Yeah,
stop, and
yeah, and I think that the bleeding actually became worse while I was in the tub than it initially was. I
oh,
was bleeding, but I wasn't passing clots or anything until I was in the tub.
oh, okay,
That's when the first sign of the clots. And it, as a child that young, and you're seeing all this blood, and of course the water makes it look even worse.
right,
I thought I was gonna die. I thought I was gonna die.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so fast forward then when my mom catches him, I've lied all these years. So now I'm in this situation. Well, I'm going to be in more trouble if I finally speak out. If I admit that this has been going on, then I'm going to be in more trouble. And mom's still going to send me away, and she's going to be even angrier at me.
So
So
your mother is still living.
at that point, yeah, well, she's the one who caught him later
Right.
on when I was 11. When I, you know, fast forwarding to 11 years old, and she walks in the bedroom, she catches him between my legs. Yeah. And, she calls the police. Everybody, starts questioning me. And now I'm like, I'm terrified. Uh, Everybody's going to blame me and I've lied all these years. I can't suddenly, admit to this. And, mom's really going to be upset with me. She's going to send me away. It's like my whole world is flipping upside down right that minute. The dreaded thing that I never wanted to happen is happening. And that is my mom finding out and the world finding out. I This is the moment of that I never wanted to happen, and it's happening. As much as I didn't want to be doing what I was doing and that to be happening, this at that moment felt worse
Mm-hmm.
than going through what I was going through.
Right.
I had already learned to cope with it. I had already learned how to get through.
How to maneuver yourself and your mind and your actions to be able
Mhm.
to survive yet another day with this individual.
And the one thing that nobody knew back then was that my brother knew. My brother knew what had been happening. My brother had walked in on it one time, and my brother heard it through the walls many times,
Do you think
but
that
felt
you're
helpless.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that he didn't say anything because he thought he might have gotten hurt violently
And
or not
after the
believed?
time that he walked in on it, um, the story that we gave was that I was popping pimples. Sounds absolutely
Yes.
ridiculous right
Very,
now,
very,
but
very, yeah.
um, that was the story that I gave, and that he gave. And, my brother knew otherwise, but didn't, I mean, like I said, my brother was a year younger than me, and he was probably about 9 at the time. What's, and, he felt helpless. There was nothing that he could do, but he absolutely knew that I wasn't Papa Pipples, and he knew what was happening to me. Um, but he felt completely helpless, like there was nothing that he could do about it.
He might have not understood as well because if he was younger than you, he might have not even understood. Do you
Uh,
feel at this did you feel at that age any resentment towards your brother that you now have cleared that up? No. Okay. And one
no,
thing that I wanted to ask you about this is the abuser that got you pregnant, correct?
no.
There was another one. Yes. Okay. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
let's go through what happened after the incident of taking you to the hospital. They physically had to perform surgery on you to correct
Mm-hmm.
your problem area and to stop the bleeding. Did you um, did you have any infections that were placed or that were no infant? Okay. And so one question that I had about this particular guy or person, I don't I don't even have the respect to call him a guy or a man, or it's just a person. Um, it angers me because I know so many people who suffered in silence, including myself. And do you believe that he was an opportunist, or was it more of a pattern that he had? Or do you understand the difference?
I do understand the difference. And honestly, knowing things like I do now, I think it was a pattern.
Okay.
I don't know if that pattern began with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm
Uh,
sure that it did not. I am sure that it did not.
um, but I do think that it was a pattern.
I am terribly, terribly sorry that all of these things, I mean, I know it's not my fault, but it hurts me to the core to know that
Mm-hmm.
children are not just back in the 70s or the 80s or the 90s, or even, now where we're in 2025 or 2026 now, that we are still dealing with these issues.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel my heart breaks each and every time that I hear about something that I'm to the point to where I can't hear it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like if I hear something on the news that there was a child that was murdered due to sexual abuse, and they had to cover it up, and it just, I know that there will be a special, if their justice does not come down and rain down on them in this life, I certainly hope that their justice and the rain will fall down on them in a different life, whether it be one
Mm-hmm.
after or one, however you believe life continues. But you said you had yet another experience that ended up with you becoming pregnant.
So um, this was the and I never really looked at this as another abuser until much later. Um, and it clearly was, but at the same time, there was a lot of ownership in my part that I, took on. So I had begun after, the incident with the gentleman that, not gentleman, but the man, my mom's previous boyfriend, who she caught, also because of my continual denial, went unpunished. He passed a lie detector test and went unpunished, even though my mom walked in, saw him between my legs. It wasn't enough
That is unbelievable.
because of my non cooperation, my saying, I didn't know what was happening. I was asleep. I don't know what he did. You know, that was the story that I stuck to. And everyone knew it was a lie. But without me cooperating, they couldn't do anything. And he passed the lie detector test and got off. Um, so my mom spiraled, and um, I was eventually sent back to live with my grandma, my biggest fear. Um, However, my mom didn't stay disconnected for years this time. But at that point, I am starting to rebel. I'm starting to um, look at myself differently. I felt like I had an invisible sign on my back that said, please molest me.
Yeah. And how
I,
and how old were you
because
at this point?
I was 11, 12.
Okay.
I just felt like that was what
You were
I
meant
was
for.
for.
Yeah.
That's what I was good for. So I'm living with my grandma. My grandma is not an easy person, and she treated me differently than she did my brother. I had zero freedom. So I went from this freedom to none. I couldn't so much as go across the street without my grandma. Um, and, as a preteen and going through all the hormones and just, everything, and still wanting my mom, and not understanding why she keeps dumping my brother and I, because even when she was there, she wasn't there. The drugs, the alcohol, the men, because she went through a chain of those after she left the previous abuser. She went through a chain of men, and then finally she was spiraled so out of control that she had lost her home, the place where we were staying, and just her life was a mess. But as someone that age, you're not seeing that. Every children are with their parents, and still, my father's not here. All I have is my mother, and I don't get along with my grandma. I got along with my grandpa. I was a grandpa's girl, but I didn't get along with my grandma. My grandma smothered me. And then I find out that my mom is living right down the street in an apartment with two men. And it's a 1-bedroom apartment. But that doesn't matter to me. The fact is, you have someplace to stay. I need to be with you. I can't do this. I can't stay with my grandma. And one of the men that she was with was the man that she busted for the drugs. I recognized him, but I didn't say anything because I didn't know if he knew that she was part of that or didn't know. And I didn't know what I could and couldn't say. So I didn't say anything. I just said, "Hi, I remember you," and left it at that. Fast forward, my mom does eventually she moves in with him. They have their place with me. And at one point, he starts making advances towards me, and I didn't reject them. In some ways, at this point, I'm so used to this kind of behavior. And I'm really angry with my mom.
So you're looking at getting back at her by being with one or her current boyfriend, or yes.
Yes. But I found out much later that was also his agenda, was to use me to get back at my mom for putting him in prison.
Gotcha.
Sadly, there's an innocent bystander that comes out of that. Right. But my mom did begin to suspect things were happening between him and I. And I, of course, denied it. And even while I was pregnant, I denied it. It wasn't until after my son was born that I ever finally admitted it. And by that time, there was nothing ever happening between him and I again. I was done with that whole relationship, and I was best friends with his sister and still am.
Wow.
Uh,
Is he still in prison or is he out?
he is deceased.
Oh,
He was never convicted of anything between him and I. He that No charges were ever filed uh, on that front again, because they wouldn't have had my cooperation. I even with They could have tested my son and found that he is, but they would have needed my permission to do that, even though I was 15 at the time. It didn't. They still would have. So my mom never pursued anything. And I mean, he had a relationship with my son when he was younger. I took him to see him, but once I finally ended things, and I'm like, no, this isn't happening. Um, but yeah.
how old was your son when you stopped?
Um, the relationship technically ended before my son was born.
Oh, so,
I
okay.
stopped having an intimate relationship with him before my son was born.
But how long after your son was born did you stop going to see him? How
Uh,
old was your son at that point?
my I was My son was pro. I mean, the only reason that I completely stopped seeing him, what he had moved out to California for a while. Um, and that was probably when he moved out to California, was probably the last time that I saw him. But he moved back here. I just didn't, my son was an adult by then.
Oh, okay.
So I stayed in contact with that family. And like I said, I'm still best friends with his sister.
That
She is my very best friend. She didn't know when the relationship was going on. She didn't know anything about it until afterwards.
oh my goodness. Well,
It was, yeah. So that, looking back, probably because of the way things happened, was probably a reason why I've never viewed it as an abuse situation, when in fact it clearly was.
mm-hmm.
It was clearly. I just never really, none of my abusers do I don't necessarily hold hatred towards, and I think that's come with healing. And pretty much most of my abusers are all deceased. So karma has taken care of that.
That's interesting that you say that because I suffer from night terrors, and I do take medication, but this month I had to increase my dosage, and because of that, I ran out of my dosage, and I wake up probably 3 to 4 nights or 3 to 4 mornings.
Hmm.
My panic attack wakes me up. So that's how I wake up every morning out of those 7 days. And my husband has to calm me down. I have to like seriously take a look around, make sure I am where I am in the present. And
Hmm.
there are days when he doesn't, he understands what happened to me as a kid, but he doesn't understand that sometimes you need to speak it out. he sees it
Mm-hmm.
as you're giving energy to that person who is no longer part of your life and no
Mm-hmm.
longer doing those things, but they have left such an impression on your mind, your brain, your body, your characteristics, who you became as a person, who you became mentally, physically, emotionally, so he doesn't understand that part. So
Right.
when you now that you have um, gone through all of this horrific trauma, and you say that you've healed from this so much so that you are that you have a positive relationship with your son's father who was an abuser. um,
Because I never viewed him as one. That was part of the reason, I've only through later points started seeing it for what it was. At that time, I never saw him as an abuser. I saw it as me being an active participant. And like I said, part of me, the reason why I was being involved with him was because I wanted to get back at my mom, because
right.
I blamed her for everything that was wrong in my life at that time. I was so angry of her at her for not being present, for not putting me first, for
Mm-hmm.
not putting my brother first, for not being a proper mother. I carried so much anger with her at that time of my life. That And I think that's why I never viewed him as being an abuser.
Mm-hmm.
You
Interesting.
know,
That is very.
that
I've
was,
never heard that
and I
before.
even
Yeah.
have it that way in my book. Even when I wrote my book, I don't have him portrayed as an abuser because I never at that time saw him as that way. It's only been through the course of the healing that I'm now looking at it like, if that was my 15, 14, 15-year-old child, I absolutely would say that he was abusing my child, because at 14 and 15 years old, you really don't have that mental capacity to. And what the hell is a 30-year-old man doing messing around with a 14, 15-year-old child?
Yes, because that's a child predator. That's a child
Hmm?
predator.
But at you know 13, 14 years old, you're not viewing that. I did not view it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I viewed it as, and because I was starving so much so for attention and for love, because at that point i I don't know what love is.
Mm-hmm.
I Because I hadn't been receiving that proper attention, that proper love from the person that I needed it most from, which was my mother. That any kind of attention that I got, I was mistaking that for love. So when I've got this person who is dazzling me,
Mm-hmm.
making me feel so good, that I'm like, this is wonderful. I want more of this. And so before I know it, I'm I'm caught up in this whirlwind. And I'm like, I don't care if my mom finds out. It's on her,
Yeah.
you know.
And
She'll
that's the
feel a
thing.
little bit of the pain that I've been feeling all these years.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
And that's interesting because when you're that young, even at 15, even at 18 sometimes, you don't know what love is. You have no clue that by 21 you're going to be a different person. By 24 you're going to be a different person. By 30 you're going to, But what's interesting to me, and this is a scientifical fact, that has no fault on the people that were abused. And people think to themselves, the people who have never gone through this, who don't understand child molestation and child sexual uh, abuse and manipulation, is that they say to them, well, if it felt good, then it must have been the child's fault. But if you take any human being and you take a knife and you cut your skin on purpose, wouldn't it doesn't matter how old you are, your skin is still going to bleed. So
Mm-hmm.
your body, whether it's 7 years old, 9 years old, 15 years old, your body is going to react the normal way that it's supposed to react when
Yeah.
certain organs or certain touching or certain, because that's the way the body is scientifically programmed to react, to feel good. and
Right.
and so that becomes confusion in the child's mind, and then that
Mm.
also becomes an opportunity for
Ab-
for the abuser or for the violator to say, oh well, they like it. Well, no, it's not that you like it, it's just that your body is reacting. And that is what a lot of people get misunderstood, miscommunicated, misconstrued about child abuse. It's not that the child is enjoying it, no, because the child doesn't even understand what the body is feeling. So especially if they have not had the proper communication from the proper parents that should be explaining to a child, at an appropriate age, hey, this is going to happen to your body, this is how it's going to feel. You probably should wait until, either, depending on the morals of the family, wait until you're in love, or wait until you're married, or wait until, whatever those morals are. And and i and i get so upset when people say, well, the child didn't seem to be um, in any kind of pain, physical pain. In fact, it seemed like they enjoyed it, and that is such a bad stigma, where I think people get so many spider webs in their brain of trying to understand child sexual abuse.
And for me, because I had so many different abusers throughout my youth, sex did not carry the same meaning that it does for most people for me. I mean, there was no emotional attachment with sex.
Mm-hmm.
Sex was just that. It was just something to do. At that point, you know, it wasn't something that you did to grow closer to somebody or to share a,
Intimacy. Yes.
right.
Yes.
It did not carry that for me.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't carry that for me for years, you know, um, because I learned to shut myself off
As it does
during.
for so many survivors, because you shut your brain off, because you know from the beginning it's wrong, from the very first time that it's wrong, that something's not right. You may not say to your brain, hey, alert, alert. No, your brain might not be that heightened, but you certainly feel like, wait a minute, this isn't supposed to be happening, something's wrong here, it hurts. Why is this happening in secret? Why am I being told that I'm going to get in trouble? Why am I, in the morning acting like nothing ever happened when something actually did? Why does that, and so you have all those questions as a kid without answers, that when you do become of age, when it's your own choice to become sexually active or have an intimate relationship with your partner, you don't have those attachment feelings like love, intimacy, uh, growing into developing a relationship with that person. You don't have that. So you become sometimes, and I'm not saying this is your path that you took, but sometimes you end up having multiple partners because of that, because of the lack of all of those things. But
I did.
yeah, I commend you so much for being so vulnerable in speaking about each time that you were violated in such a horrific way. And I know that we have other things that we want to discuss with you. So we're going
Mm-hmm.
to pause here.
Okay.
We're going to take a short, maybe 5 minute break. And we're going to go on and go into some other issues that you've dealt with your life. So I'm going to end this call and then I will call you back and we will continue with the rest of the subject matters that we plan on discussing.
Okay.
So listeners, please hang on. You can just at the point that this airs, you'll be able to click right onto the next video, so you won't have any waiting time at all. But Sissy will be right back to discuss the rest of those issues. Thank you for being here so patient.